Hello, everybody. Hello, ICASSI people. It's so good to connect with you, even if it's in this way, this special way. Uh, I'm going to talk about social interest, but before I begin, I would like to make two comments that have to do with language. One is that, just to remind you that English is not my mother tongue, and therefore, well, you understand. And the other thing is that I will not always repeat both genders as is politically expected. It's too much. When I mention only one gender, of course, you know, I mean them both. So we begin. At this time of the coronavirus that we're going through, no one doubts that we human beings on this planet Earth are one group, that we all belong to this group called mankind, and that in order to cope with the hardship that nature has brought on us, we need to connect and cooperate. No point in competing. We have to act with social interest. At this time, it is obvious that the solution must include each and everyone, regardless of nation, gender, skin color, religion, and every other criteria. A personal victory or a victory of a certain group would be meaningless, not only to others, but also to that person or that group. Adler knew all this, and he told it to everyone who was and is willing to listen. But let us start with the beginning. How did Adler get there? He was influenced by Darwin, who believed that man is born into the flow of evolution, equipped like all other creatures with a life force. Like all living creatures, humans strive to maintain their existence and continue it. To achieve this, humans must cope with the world into which they are born and adapt to its demands. Otherwise, humanity will become extinct. Adler said, from the point of view of nature, man is an inferior being. But this inferiority with which he is afflicted and of which he becomes aware through a feeling of deprivation and insecurity acts as a continuous stimulus to find a way of adjusting, of providing, of creating situations in which the disadvantages of his position seem compensated. But humans, as individuals, cannot fulfill this task. Darwin noted, not as humans, I mean as individuals, humans as individuals cannot fulfill this task. Darwin noted that in nature, weak animals do not live alone. Weak animals always live in groups. Based on this, Adler said that since humans are small animals, among the weakest creatures found in nature, humans cannot survive alone. Needless to say that the continuation of the species, a human being cannot do by himself. Humans need shelter, food, and clothing, and as we know, medical care. No one can take care of all of this by himself. What makes humans' existence possible the social group, the family, the small community, the country, and the entire human community, past and present. This explains that the universal goal men strive towards is to know he has a safe place in the group. to know that he belongs to it, and that he is a significant and inseparable part of it. For a human being belonging to the group is equivalent to existing. But for a group to fulfill its purpose, two conditions must be met. There must be a division of labor and there must be cooperation. Let's have an exercise. How many people were involved in the work that was necessary to enable us to have me talk to you like this right now? If we had enough time and we would really be looking into it, we would discover that the number of people involved was endless. For example, just think of the number of people who were involved in building the trucks that move the metal our laptops and telephones are made of. Sorry. If we think of all the inventions and all the work that has been put into creating such a thing as a truck, it becomes clear that eventually we arrive at the person who invented the wheel. Therefore, says Adler, since the creation of man, we are all part of a huge web covering the entire human race, and we live our lives based on the contribution of whoever was here before us and did something in human history. Let's have it in his words. What do we find when we're born into this world? The answer is we find all the previous useful contributions which have been supplied by our forebears. We find human beings in their bodily and mental development, social institutions, art, science, lasting traditions, social relations, values, schooling, etc. We receive all these and build upon them, advancing, improving, and changing them. This is the inheritance from our forebears. It is their contribution in which their spirit lives on immortally after the body has fallen. How beautiful. It is important for every one of us to remember something, that this legacy of humanity rests no more than just on more than just those, not only, wanted to say, not only on those people who contributed outstanding inventions. We are also talking about the shoemaker who made shoes for the inventors, as well as the tailor who made the shoemaker's clothes. Adler again. When someone makes shoes, someone else needs them, and he has the right to receive living expenses and all the advantages of hygiene and good education for his children. The fact that he receives payment is an acknowledgement of being helpful and useful. Whoever contributes to the general needs while actualizing his own abilities has the satisfaction of being useful and needed. The person feels he has a place and belongs to the human community. And here we get to the point. Whoever acts in a way that contributes to the general good acts with social interest. That's the story. Here, according to Adler, we're getting to the part that we as individuals must play in order for the survival, the growth, the development of humanity to take place. In order for civilization and culture that they should happen, or to put it simply, in order for life to be good for all of us, we as individuals must make a choice. And it is our free choice. We must make the choice to act with social interest. Because if we do not make this choice, it won't work. Let me illustrate this, what I just said. Please follow me with your imagination to a prehistoric man who wanted to move something heavy, say an object or an animal, from one place to another. He looked for something like a board, perhaps, put the heavy object on it, and tried to push or pull it. When our man could not move the object because it was too heavy, he had an idea. He thought of putting a round-shaped stone under the board and found that it was much easier to move the board with the object this way. He succeeded. You notice that we're talking of the man who invented the wheel, whom we mentioned before. Only there was a difference in our story. The man did not act with social interest. He did not reveal his excellent solution for that problem, for moving objects from one place to another, to anyone. He did not share his ideas. He did not contribute them to the group. Sometimes later, someone else faced the same challenge to move a heavy object. He may have placed his object on a flat board, maybe even thought of putting something round under it. Maybe he didn't, only he had to go through the whole process by himself. And so would we, over and over again. If people did not cooperate and share their solutions to problems of life, what I'm saying is clear. We could not have it. We take it for granted. To us, it is obvious we must all contribute the fruit of our work to society. Adler really just pointed it out. He showed us if humans did not act with social interest, that is to say, if they didn't contribute the fruit of their ideas and their work to society, humanity would not have developed, and eventually it would not have survived. Adler developed the concept of social interest after World War I. During the last part of his life, he considered it his most important message. Humans must act according to the demands of social interests. What does it mean? How can we put it in terms of behavior? When Eva Dreikurs Ferguson, in 2008 it was, lectured in Israel, she described the principle that should guide us in our actions. I believe her words make it quite clear. We must act according to the needs and requirements of the self, the other or the others, and the situation, not necessarily in that order. The order will change. I believe this describes our the behavior in the best way I ever heard. Now a little bit of philosophy. The instruction to act with social interest I like to call Adler's theory of morality. That is a moral theory giving us guidelines on the way we should act. To illustrate what I mean by a moral theory, let me compare it to a religion. Any religion, tells us what we should do and what we should not do. It tells us the difference between good and bad, between right and wrong. Nevertheless, the moral theory of Adler differs from a religion by the rationale behind it. In the case of a religion, the rationale is the will of God. It's his command. In the case of Adler's moral theory, it is scientific observation, supported by the research of Charles Darwin. This research led Adler to the conclusion that human beings must, in order to survive, live in a group and cooperate. But note that Adler's is a special kind of moral theory. It is a moral theory that has no universal rules, like, for example, thou shalt not bear false witness. At the time of the Nazi regime, if you were hiding a Jew in your house and soldiers came to the door and asked if you have seen a person who escaped them just now, you may bear false witness. Acting with social interest does not mean act according to given specific rules that always apply to everyone, everywhere. No, it means act according to the real, present, and future needs of the social world as you perceive and interpret them. What this means is that we have a freedom of choice, and by that the responsibility to consider at any time all the factors involved, the changing needs of the self, the others, and the situation, to weigh the relative weight and importance of each factor and make a choice to act with or without social interest. The criteria or goals of those who act with social interest are things like what serves as a contribution, what is useful, and also what brings enjoyment to someone, anyone, satisfaction, growth, well-being, progress, both for the self and for the others. The goal of those who act with social interest is never winning a competition or gaining personal superiority of any kind. Here is what Adler says about the guidelines for, I say, moral behavior. What we call justice, and we see as a positive side of human nature, is none other than the fulfillment of demands that have emerged from social life. These are the requirements that shape the psychological organ. Responsibility, loyalty, and honesty are actually requirements that have been imposed and maintained by a principle of general validity of the community. What we call a good or a bad character can only be judged from a community perspective. All this was theoretical stuff. Let us look at the practical side of it. What does it mean in everyday life to act with social interest? What does it look like? How is it expressed? It would mean that one is willing to see, hear, and feel not only him or herself, but the other as well. When Adler was asked what the meaning was of social interest, he said he couldn't give an exact definition, but he liked to use the following words that he had heard or read somewhere, as give them as the meaning of social interest. And the words were to see with the eyes of another, to hear with the ears of another, to feel with the heart of another. If you listen carefully, what was described here is identification. When we identify with the other, we can feel empathy and show it. The person who acts with social interest, I am trying to describe that person. He's embedded, deeply embedded in the social group. He is part of it. He is in the midst of life, deep inside. He fulfills the three main tasks of life. What are they? First and foremost, this person works. He holds some kind of a job. He does some kind of work. With well-developed social interest, he tries to perform his work, whatever it is, the best way he can. Everyone who holds a job is making a contribution. We are supposed to do some kind of work. The work we do gives us the sense of having a place, of belonging to the group, being a part of it. This is why unemployment is so bad, so hard. Fulfilling the life task of work, making a contribution, enables one to achieve a sense of worth, while at the same time doing something for the good of others. People with a less developed social interest may seek to get the sense of worth through a comparison with others, with the emphasis on being more than them in some way, being better or richer or smarter or whatever ends with an error. Fulfilling the second life task means one will, in most cases, be involved in some kind of an intimate, close relationship, have some kind of a loving connections, loving family connections. Fulfilling the third life task, the person is able to keep social relationships without getting into too many conflicts, power struggles, or even animosities. An individual who acts with social interest is relatively often focused on what he or she can give and less often on what he or she can get or even take. We can look at the example of a person at the time of coronavirus who is locked in at home, unable to do or to get what he is used to. Could be that such a person will feel miserable, be bored, have a lot of self-pity, and spend all the time watching television. But it could also be that such a person would think of some of his neighbors who live in the same building or the next building where it is allowed to go, and remember that they are elderly people and that they may need some help. This person is acting with social interest if he knocks on their door or calls them up on the telephone just to ask those people if he could be of help to them in some way. What I am trying to again emphasize here is that acting with social interest does not necessarily mean to be the one to find the cure for corona. Another thing I wish to mention is that a person who has a well-developed social interest and acts upon it is in no ways a saint or a martyr. He does not act with what is called altruism as opposed to egoism. This is not what is meant. It is something else I learned from Eva Dreikurs Ferguson, who said it long ago in one of her first morning talks at ICASSI. I learned that it absolutely was not expected that a person looks only after the needs of others or be preoccupied with giving. Such behavior between us is in most cases motivated by the wish to be better than all others. It usually means that the person is striving to establish for himself or herself a position of moral superiority. No, a person acting with social interest does take care and responsibility for his or her own well-being. And this is one of his or her first obligations. He must look after his health and take care of his personal development, both also preparing him to make contribution. This person does his best to have a good life, be a relatively happy person, and by this become pleasant for others to be with. To neglect oneself means acting like a spoiled child. It means putting on others the obligation to look after him, fulfill his needs, and make him happy. This is a choice to become a burden to others instead of contributing to them. Finally, I would like to point out that there is a profit, a benefit attached to acting with social interest. It is the best way to get rid of inferiority feelings, of feeling of worthlessness. To win this benefit, it is always a good idea to get up and do something that is of use for at least one other person. Give. Stop thinking about what you did not get. Start thinking of the endless opportunities that exist in your world, in the world around you, to give, to be of help, to be of use, to be generous. If you do this, you will be wanted, needed, you will be appreciated, you will feel you have a good place, you will feel you belong to the human society. You belong to it anyway. It's not that there is no condition there. But if you act with social interest, you will be aware of it. So if you lack in self-confidence, if you find it hard to appreciate yourself, act according to the rules of social interest. Even if you don't feel like it, it doesn't matter that much how you feel. What matters is, what really matters is what you do. Doesn't matter so much how you feel, it matters what you do. So start with the doing. The feeling will come later. Give, be generous, be committed. It is our free choice to do it and to experience a sense of belonging. Thank you. This is the bibliography. And finally, I want to repeat the words: to see with the eyes of another, to hear with the ears of another, and to feel with the heart of another. Bye bye. See you in Morocco.